Okay, so actually, I wasn't going to choose the axe for the one that defined it for me, but that's okay because the axe is probably, I think, no, the axe is probably the one that defines the whole subject matter the most. But I was going to go for the Swiss Army knife because growing up, this was like such a big deal, and I mean, I got so many stories. I don't know how many Swiss Army knives I've had through my life. Probably 100, probably 150. And everybody knows what a Swiss Army knife is. I've got one story specifically. I was given a Swiss Army knife from you guys. I don't know if it was a birthday or it was a Christmas or if it was just nothing. I don't really know. Um, but it was a big deal. And we were always taught to tie, which I still do, tie a lanyard onto our tools, especially the Swiss Army knife, so we could put them on our belt. Find a belt loop here, so we didn't lose them. And I think what was really being instilled upon, I say us, and I'm referring to my little brother, who's not so little, he's only 2 years younger than me, but was this idea to take care of stuff, and that is a huge part of kind of that. I alluded to it before, that backcountry versus front country mentality, like taking care of something, valuing something versus disposable world, modern world, which is, absolutely even that can be very hard for people that are outdoorsy to swallow because oftentimes being someone that's interested in the outdoors, there's this idea that you're innately concerned with the environment, and yet we look at the industry itself, and it's just like it's not environmentally sound. But anyway, I digress. So I can remember taking this knife and being just fascinated with the pendulum of it, and swinging it like this, and then, well, what the heck? If I swing it like this in this nice red color, they're almost all red now, but they used to be red and black. You could get a black one or a
little tinker.
And I had like the Tinker, which I believe that's what this one. Maybe it's the Camper, but it's a smaller one. And I'm swinging it like this, and I let go of it, and I watch it sail. And I remember it goes up by this popple tree, and it comes down, and I lost it, and I was devastated. I was crushed that I had lost it. But to me, the Swiss Army knife is such a versatile bushcraft tool. It's delicate, it's rugged, it's good steel, and I don't know. I have the. This is the one I've got more than one, but this is the one I carry. It's got the awl. It's got the Phillips head screwdriver in case I am dealing with machinery. It's got two blades, like a 2-inch one and a 1-inch one. The auler punch. Then it's got a flathead can opener, wire stripper. Obviously, I'm not using these things that often, but I feel like I use this when I'm instructing or when I'm in the field, probably more than any other tool. And this came from Dad, by the way. This is like the Swiss Army knife was like the crown jewel.
Oh yeah, well this is a tool that you can carry easily, and you can have it with you all the time, and it can do far more than what people think. And there's a number of different models that are smallish, so that you can actually put them in your pocket. You get those great big huge ones,
and then we've gone the other way recently too. It's gone the other way too. They get the micro ones, which are worthless.
Yeah, and the real tiny things are not a good tool. And when we are talking about Swiss Army knives, we're talking about good high quality knives like this. There are knockoff ones out there that are made to look like a real Swiss Army knife, and they are junk, and you don't want to carry them. But these tools are something you can have with you all the time. And Josh said about taking care of things. I found that when I was teaching classes, not just to civilians, but to military personnel also, that inevitably, I would ask them to bring a knife. Inevitably, the knives were dull. they weren't even sharp. People, really didn't know how to sharpen them. Um, and you want this thing good and sharp. Is a skill of how to sharpen them, even when you're in the bush. Without all the fancy sharpening stuff, you got to know how to keep these things sharp. Um, so they really are an essential tool that can do a great deal for you. Once again, it's the same type of thing with an axe. People are almost offended. They're not almost, they are offended when I first start talking to them and keep telling them, would you be careful, because consistently people get hurt. They take a knife like this and they don't really understand what they're doing with them, and they try to like push it into something and it folds down on their finger and cuts them, stuff like that. People do all the time because they're really just not. Once again, when's the last time you built something with a jackknife? Most people never have. So but even a small knife like this, I can skin out large game. I've skinned out a deer with knives like this without any problem whatsoever. But it's got to be sharp. It's got to be sharp. It's got to be in good condition. All of that is up to you to take care of it like that. And most of these smaller ones that they make are not over gadgeted. Like Josh was saying, the Tinker is a popular one that I used a lot, and it's small enough that you can carry it all the time. There's another model, I don't know, it's got a real small pair of scissors in it, which is really nice. Just for taking care of yourself. You ever been out in the woods and you're working on stuff, and well, a lot of you haven't been out in the woods really working on stuff, but when things happen, you rip a fingernail or something like that. Boy, it's nice to have that little pair of the scissors just to snip something up and do real fine work when you're building something. Whether you're building traps or working with birch bark or whatever it may be. So different people have different ideas on which model to get, and that also depends on what you expect from it and the terrain and everything you're in. But a Swiss Army knife is essential, and tying the cord is very important, because once again I've done years of training, and so many people lose them, and very quickly. And people are worried about, if you need it in a real rush, don't worry about it, because when you yank it, that belt loop's going to rip, and you can get that knife pretty fast.
Yeah.
It's not an issue. With mine, I often take a very large fishing swivel and hook it onto the knife, because I can clip it on and clip it off. When I'm working with it. And obviously that little piece of cord can come in pretty handy too, but that's a whole nother subject. Just something that would always be, be with you. But yeah, Swiss Army knife is something everybody should have, and you should take very good care of it. That's a big issue.
It's the knife I recommend. It's kind of timeless. I'm pretty sure they were $20 in 1985, and I think that they're $20 in 2020. So they're really affordable, and yeah, they're not as exciting as maybe a big K-Bar or Bear Grylls survival knife or what have you. But this is way more versatile. So if I was to instruct you to purchase a knife, this would be the only knife I'd really require you to have for the class. Leatherman, they're great. I do prefer ergonomically. I prefer the Swiss Army knife, just because the Leatherman's boxy and doesn't feel as good in the hand. Well, they're great. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's, what? Let's just think of some names out there. Schrade, Gerber. They all, they're all good knives. And then you get into more specialized Benchmade, whatever. But they're all pretty decent for this. So I guess that naturally just leads to a fixed blade knife, which honestly I don't think is as versatile as the small knife. I feel I use the small knife much more than I do the fixed blade knife. I like to have one. The knife that I like is a Groman or D.H. Russell Canadian belt knife that was actually designed for the mounted police. And they've gone way up in price from what they used to be. So, but it's a full tang knife, meaning that the steel goes all the way to the back of the handle, all the way through the handle, as opposed to just being kind of epoxied in down here. I like this knife. Again, I think that's only 3.5 inches, that blade. So it's not very big. Got some moldiness on it. It's not very big, but it can do anything I need it to do in the woods. The only real, the drawback to this knife, as you were mentioning, skinning out large game, which is totally possible. I've done the same thing, but it's nicer to have a larger knife in that circumstance. Although trying to skin out a squirrel with this or a muskrat with this is actually pretty difficult. Ironically, I think that when I am using the larger blade knife, I'm using it for plants. I'm using it for cooking. That's when I use it the most time, because it's actually safer and I can get more done simply because the blade width and length. So if I'm chopping stuff, I can get a lot more done with this, and I use it for cooking more than anything else. A big knife really doesn't have any purpose. The K-bar, its purpose was to kill people. So that's really, we're not doing that in this class at all. And so it doesn't really have a good application outside of that kind of aggression, which has nothing to do with the class. And I do want to mention, there is an aversion to edged tools, axes, knives, or firearms, which I have here as well, which actually pains me because it's a symptom of a fallen society. And I think if there was one emotion or philosophy that encompasses all this, and I have to tell myself this all the time too, it's humility. Like when you first get the axe or the knife, it seems like, and I can speak, as a male, as a guy that grew up in the country, you're just supposed to know how to do this. But because modern society doesn't ask us to, it's not necessary anymore. People don't really know how to do it. And then from there, unfortunately, because of popular culture and the media, and I know it's cliche, but these tools become perverse into something that they're not.
Demonized.
And we have to understand that for the average person, the knife, the axe, and dare I say even the rifle was used for daily living. Not to say that this stuff was never used as instruments of war, but way more has it been used as an instrument of living. And yet, to people today, when they see an image of an axe, knife, or rifle, they automatically think of violence. That's something that I believe is really a very new thing if we look at it historically. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. These things have been used through time way more. So I really don't, I don't look at them that way at all. And I don't know if that makes me better or worse, but I just don't. So
that is a big problem in our society today. I'm old enough that, when I went to school, all the boys had jackknives. Nowadays, they're taught, it's a bad thing. It's like, well, it was just part of our life back then.
You're not allowed to bring a jackknife. And the same thing with firearms. I remember bringing my rifle to school because, we would put them in a place and leave them there for the day at school, but many of the boys would hunt on the way to school and hunt on the way home. It was
part of life. It's, what you did. So the whole outlook of these tools now in our culture is, really destructive. It's become, well, I don't know how to put it, but it's like, um, it's they've turned everything into something in modern culture, and not into reality.
Or disregarded the past.
And yeah, totally disregarded and disrespected the past. Um, and so now people are so irresponsible, that it's a real problem. When I was a boy, if you brought your gun to school, for instance, there's no way you would do something inappropriate with it. Point it at somebody or anything like that, because the last thing in the world you wanted to do was to show that you weren't man enough to handle one. It was just a total opposite. If you were man enough to handle one, then you were man enough to be responsible, to take care of it, and all that kind of thing. But now responsibility is something that nobody wants. No, you don't need to be. It needs to be forced on you. You need to have laws and regulations to make people behave in certain ways because they can't be responsible. Well, I disagree with that.
Well, let me tell you a story about this class that's kind of illustrates this point. Within the class, we skin a squirrel, and then we eat the squirrel and we tan the hide. Something that was not abnormal in my youth at all, and I have been doing since I was very young. However, I recognize that it's quite a thrill for a lot of people, which is cool. That's totally cool, and I'm honored to be the instigator of that. And I don't, it doesn't matter. It's just experience. There is some blood involved and there's some guts involved, but it just doesn't bother me at all. There's not even one iota. And I know that most folks don't see where their food come from and so on and so forth. But I got this phone call at home, and it was the president of Castleton a number of years ago. And I don't talk to the president that often. And the president said, Josh, do you do something in your class with squirrels? Like, what? Something to do with squirrel carcasses? And I'm like, oh boy, I recognized I was in the hot seat, so I kind of explained what happened. And he said, well, we have a bit of a situation. And somebody in my class had taken some of the carcasses of the squirrels and had put them around campus in unopportune locations, like hanging from the shower or in the refrigerator posed with a beer or what have you. And the president was like, this needs to be addressed, or you're not going to be able to teach these skills anymore. We can't do this. He's very concerned about the media getting hold of it and it getting twisted and taken out of context. But I can take a joke, right? So I can recognize the humor in it, but I think that it really kind of addresses what we've been talking about here, which is like, that the greatest thing that student could do with this squirrel, that yes, it's a squirrel, right? But it should be honored, and the information that students are getting should also be honored, because it's more than just an interpretation of a chapter, but it's a lifestyle, it's a way of living, and it's cumulative knowledge through generations. And so by kind of demonizing that and turning into this comedic routine that was meant to shock or harm people, although let's be honest, it's not going to harm them that much, but it's meant to be disturbing. Then almost resulted in what? The loss of the opportunity of the class for other people. And I think that we can kind of correlate that to other tools that we would use in a bush or wilderness type situation. So we're going on and on. Why don't we just do 2 more for the time? Where are we at, Lee?
20 minutes.
Yeah, good. We can stop it. We'll do 1 more.